Welcome everyone to the second Kubernetes Monitoring Helm Chart office hours. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak publicly about some of the work that we're doing here. This project means a lot to me, and I'm really excited for the support and the momentum that it's gaining. I said earlier, but this will be recorded for the YouTube channel. But I said earlier that the prepared content that I have is a little bit smaller today that compared to last month's office hours. But that does open up for more time for Q&A. So start with thinking about some of the questions. There we go. All right. So the agenda, like I said, it's a really short one. Just an update on the V1 Helm chart and an update on the V2 Helm chart. And then just time for Q&A. So what's happening with the Kubernetes Monitoring Helm chart V1? Actually, just now I'm in the process of releasing version 1.6.11. Which will add better support for the native histograms when you're scraping metrics. A lot of these updates are found by customers who have wish lists or they have something that they need. And so definitely we react and we handle those requests as quickly and as seriously as possible. Since the last office hours, I think we've done 9 patch releases. I think it was at 1.6.0 or 1.6.1. I need to look at the dates. But we've released a lot of patch releases to the version 1 Helm chart line. A lot of them containing dependency updates, so things like Alloy, OpenCost, Prometheus operators, things like that. Other notable things that we did, restricting Beyla to only deploy to Linux nodes, adding bear token auth support to Tempo, and then adding OAuth 2 support for Prometheus and Loki if you're using the OTLP protocol. Previously, you could use OAuth 2 tokens or OAuth 2 auth if you're sending via remote write or the Loki protocol. Now it's covered on both cases. And like I mentioned, the native support for or better handling for native histograms. I do want to say again that as soon as 2.0 is released, we are not stopping support for the version 1 line. We have a lot of people who are using this Helm chart. The support will continue. Like I said last time, at some point, we're going to have to make the line to say, version 1 is done, all efforts on version 2. I don't know when the date is that's going to be, but rest assured that's not going to happen quickly and without everyone in the community knowing when that sort of coffee is going to happen. So. For the V2 update, since the last office hours, we have released several more release candidate versions. I think we're on release candidate 5 now. And the efforts that are being put into updating those is going into feature parity. So what do we do in version 2? That means that when you upgrade from version 1 to version 2, you're not losing features. The things that we've added most notably is the auto instrumentation feature. So what was just enabling Grafana Beyla as a deployment and then getting the metrics scraped, now that's being moved into its own feature, its own sub feature of the Helm chart called auto instrumentation. So essentially it's doing the same thing, but it also opens us up to do a lot more interesting integrations between Beyla and other systems rather than it just being like a metrics target. We've also added OpenCost again. So the OpenCost for getting cost metrics is now part of the cluster metrics feature. So that's in there. And then I've also added the MySQL service integration into the integrations feature. This one was a fun one to add because not only does enabling this give you the MySQL database metrics, it also has better handling of MySQL pod logs. And it also, when you enable the integration via the integrations feature in Helm chart V2, it will make sure that you don't get duplicate logs if you're also using the pod logs feature. So they coordinate with each other to say, oh, MySQL pod is getting, or the MySQL integration is finding the MySQL pod logs. I'm not going to scrape the logs also using the default log gathering method. So there's better coordination, better handling of the pod logs. Last office hours, I promised that there was going to be migration tooling and migration documentation for moving from V1 to V2. A lot of late nights, but I finally got that done. And thanks to Marco, we actually found and fixed a bad table. So it's even better than it was a few hours ago. So the link to the documentation is there. It's in, if you don't want to parse through the GitHub link there, It's in the docs folder of the V2 chart on GitHub. And I have a separate GitHub repository called k8s-monitoring Helm migrator that's using the GitHub pages to host a website. There's a migrator tool. You know what? Show, don't tell. So I'm just going to open this up real quick. When you go to that, you just get this really simple website. The goal will be you copy and paste your V1 Helm chart values file into here, and it will spit out a V2 Helm chart values file over here. It's a work in progress. There are going to be gaps. There are going to be places where we're not quite handling it. I'm trying to work through this as best I can. So if it doesn't work immediately, let me know, file an issue, or just kind of be patient. The tool is meant to be kind of a best effort. So once you have the V2 values file, it's encouraged to look through it, make sure it makes sense, maybe do a little bit of tuning to metrics load or anything like that that you want. In Helm chart, and one of the things that's applicable to that, in Helm chart V1, we enabled a lot of features by default without setting things to true or false. If you gave us the destinations, by default, you would get cluster metrics and pod logs and cluster events, and annotations would be scraped, and service monitors, pod monitors. A lot of features were enabled by default. In V2, nearly all features are disabled by default. It's more of an opt-in model. You choose what exactly you want. So for this migrator, I'm trying to honor what V1's intent was. So the V2 values will often have more enabled features by default. So that's one of the things that you're going to want to check. Do I really care about scraping service monitors and pod monitors, or I don't use the Prometheus operator objects? I can turn off that feature. So that's what's going on there. Let's head back to here. And then a quick update on the timeline for Helm chart V2. We're in release candidate 5, and as that number gets higher, we all think that that means it's going to get released sooner than later. I am holding off on this until I feel comfortable that V2 is in a state that is as close to feature parity as possible, and also in as reliable a state as possible. So just like I was in back here, I kind of hedged and said that, support will continue until some nebulous date. I'm also saying right now, V2 release is still at some point in the future. I'm hoping definitely maybe in the next couple weeks. But subject to change. I said that it was going to be released before KubeCon, and KubeCon is coming on. So yeah. That's the end of my prepared content. So at this point, I would love to hear from you. If you've got questions, we can answer them. And yeah, so let's see. I see there's a chat message. Yes, yeah. So Sean mentioned in chat, I'm also working on trying to prevent Kepler from running on serverless platforms, both on AWS and GCP. That's a very good point. So I did some work to prevent Kepler from being deployed on Fargate nodes. And that's only half of it. We need to make sure that if you're on something like GKE Autopilot, services that try to really get down into the node level, like Kepler, like Node Exporter, we got to make sure that that those don't run on those platforms. That does make me one of the things that reminds me of, and I did want to highlight, one of the design features that we're really pushing in V2, more from the developer standpoint than the user standpoint, is much more rigorous automated testing. If you've seen a PR that you've put into the Helm chart lately, especially if it's into the V2 of the Helm chart, you'll see there's a ton of automated checks that are running now. I think the highest one I've seen was in the 40s or something like that. And one of the reasons for that is that not only do we do a lot of unit tests and generated file checks like we have before, but we're also doing more and more integration tests. So actually building Kubernetes clusters in GitHub Actions, running tests against them and checking them. The goal is to run a lot of those, and eventually the goal will be to run automated tests against different platforms. So in my ideal world, that would mean that I would be able to get an autopilot cluster from GKE and test deployments on that. Other platforms like OpenShift and EKS with Fargate nodes, with Windows nodes. be able to test the compatibility of everything onto those two. So Sebastian posted another comment in chat. Will we have some defaults around Beyla that prevents observing the Alloy instances? Yeah, we can definitely do that. Best thing would actually be, open up an issue and just say, feature requests. We would love to be able to tune Beyla so that it's, smarter in its defaults. I know that, when I was working with the application observability squad, we've also done some things to add sensible defaults, as in don't observe my endpoints like the health and liveness, the readiness and liveness endpoints. When you deploy something into Kubernetes, you can specify, hey, Kubernetes, ping this endpoint every so often just to make sure that my pod's still alive. If application observability is detecting those and then reporting traces for every single time we get a liveness check, it ends up being a lot of extra data for just basically a health check. So we've added sensible defaults to make sure that those are filtered out. All right, another question. Are you recommending starting a new project or one that will begin in the coming days or weeks with V2? Is it production ready, or should we wait until 2.0 is officially released? That's a good question. If you are working with someone, or if on your system you're willing to just throw it into like a dev cluster, try things out, it definitely is in a working state. But would I call it production ready? It's hard to say. I don't think we're running it in many production workloads at the moment. I would love for you to try it out and let me know. Let me know where things aren't quite working. And I hope that I've proven that my turnaround time is quite quick. So if you find something that's not quite there, file an issue, find me on the public Grafana Slack, and then we can get that fixed and turned around pretty quickly. In general, if you are looking at doing something that you want to quickly roll out to prod, I would say stick with the V1 chart. But if you wanting to get started with this, you wanting to explore some things, give the V2 chart a try. All right, Marco, I see your hand up there.
Yes, thank you. A couple of comments. First of all, since everything is based on Alloy, Alloy health is really important. So I would like to see that working before the actual release. So it's really interesting to be able to see how all the Alloy instances are behaving once they are deployed, but that will come. So no big deal, and continue working on that, please. The second bit is the actual question. So we got some customers the question of, I want to ship my telemetry data only via OTLP. Okay, so something went into this, and I like it. So there is a concept of ecosystem, as you mentioned in the documentation. So there is a slight preference, as I see right now, to send to Mimir and to Loki, and to Pyroscope so different endpoint for different kind of data. So we will have the possibility of sending everything via TLP if it makes sense. I mean, that metrics, logs, and traces.
Perfect. Yeah, those are great questions. Let me first address the Alloy Health integration. I saw the issue that you posted earlier. Gosh, I want to say it's a few weeks ago now. I've been digging into that. I have a change that I think will help with that. A little history on that. So when the early versions of the V1 version of the chart were being written, the focus on the chart was really about enabling the Kubernetes monitoring feature within Grafana Cloud. And so that's why we have so many of the defaults that were enabled. The start of the Alloy integration, so in the V1 chart, it's under the metrics section in metrics Alloy. The default for that was only to send the Alloy build info metric, just one single metric. And the reason for that is that for the Kubernetes monitoring project, we wanted to just understand what was the footprint of your different Alloy instances. We wanted to get the versions of that for understanding, have you upgraded recently, just kind of where are the metrics coming from. When moving to V2, so we did support the Alloy Health integration, but you had to go in and add a special flag that says, I want to get all of the metrics. I don't want to get just Alloy build info. When I moved to V2, Alloy became part of the integrations feature, so parallel to Cert Manager and MySQL and all that. But previously, it had kept its default of just sending the Alloy build info metric. On hindsight, I didn't think that made sense. If you wanted to instantiate the Alloy integration, you want to use the Alloy integration. So by default, it's going to get the set of metrics that will make the Alloy health integration light up. And you have the option of filtering it down to just Alloy build info if that's all you care about. So that issue is underway. I'm going to do some testing with that. When I get that merged, I would love your help with just ensuring that things are working for you on your end. The second question about sending all data via OTLP and the whole ecosystem thing, that's a really good question. So when I was building V2, and obviously the way that destinations are defined is very different in V2 than it is in V1. And in fact, the types they mean subtly different things. In V1, the Prometheus external service was really, where do I send all metrics? It didn't have to be Prometheus. It didn't even have to be remote write. It could be OTLP to some other data source that handles metrics. In V2, the Prometheus type actually just means what protocol are we using. And so the Prometheus type means remote write. The OTLP type, which replaces the tempo external service for traces. The OTLP type actually has the ability to switch on support for traces and metrics and logs. And so you can define a single destination of type OTLP that handles all those three different telemetry data types. The way ecosystems work in destinations, and I do have a doc in the V2 chart repository that explains this or tries to explain this a little bit. The way that ecosystems work is that if you scrape metrics, if you've defined two different destinations, one's of Prometheus type, and then there's an OTLP type that also handles metrics. When you're scraping metrics, if you scraped them using Prometheus.scrape, so it's a Prometheus style metric, we will prefer to use the Prometheus style destinations. If you've gathered those metrics because of OTLP, so like application metrics have delivered it over the OTLP receivers, we will prefer to use the OTLP destination that handles metrics. Each feature should have the ability to define the list of destinations, so you can override that if you want. But that was the goal, was to prefer the same ecosystem in which the data was generated to where the data will be delivered. That being said, if you've only defined a single destination and it's type OTLP and it handles metrics, logs, and traces, then all metrics will be delivered to that one anyway. So we do fall back. We will cross the ecosystem boundary if there is no other options. So in your example, if you have a single endpoint that handles all three of those data types, then no matter where the metrics are gathered, no matter where the logs are gathered, it should be delivered to that OTLP destination. Profiles is coming. I know that Profiles is added to the OpenTelemetry spec. As far as I've seen in the latest versions of Alloy, the profiles aren't yet handled in there. So as soon as profiles are handled, then we'll have the same thing for Pyroscope and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic questions. Anything else? This is great. I knew this one was going to be a little bit shorter, and that's all right. I will get this posted, the recording posted up to the Grafana YouTube channel. I'm really excited about this. I think we are marching very, very close to being able to release 2.0. Then I'm already thinking about what sort of features are going to be coming into 2.1 and 2.2 and even 3.0 in the future too. So very exciting and bright future for this project. So thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions outside of this office hours, feel free to find me on the Kubernetes Slack channel on our public Slack, grafana.slack.com. I do try to answer as many questions there as I can. Otherwise, yeah, continue to use the project, open issues, open PRs, and we can make this successful. So thank you so much, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Bye.
Bye-bye.